Now we're coming to the end of our programme here today, but now looking back at one of our main stories, Turkey's opposition has stepped up its objections to the conduct of the referendum that has just given President Recep Tayyip Erdogan new powers. The Yes camp won by almost 51.4% in Sunday's referendum on a new presidential system, essentially scrapping the office of the Prime Minister and giving the President direct powers over the entire executive. And the No camp came in at 48.59%. Now, with tensions once again escalating in Turkey, opponents fear that this result will hand Erdogan one-man rule. And the referendum has been seen as crucial, not just for shaping the political system of Turkey, but also the future strategic direction of a nation that has been a NATO member since 1952 and negotiating entry into the EU for half a century. Now, in Live on Live this Monday, I'm joined by author and academic, specialist in Turkish politics, Dorothée Schmid from the French Institute of International Relations. That's IFRI. Dorothée, thanks for coming back into the studio.
Most welcome. Bonjour.
Bonjour, bonjour. Now, let's have a look at this. Erdogan's victory was far tighter in the end than expected. There was a late surge when the count was coming through. But Turkey's three largest cities, that's Istanbul, Ankara and Izmir, all voted no. Although the yes vote did prevail in Erdogan's Anatolian kind of heartland. But his victory speech was quite muted. Can you tell us why?
First of all, I wouldn't say that we did not expect him to win so tightly, because actually the polls were very much showing that some part of his electorate hesitated until the last minute, especially probably among the ultra-nationalist part. You know, he's made organized an alliance with the MHP, the Nationalist Action Party.
Indeed.
And apparently, Erdogan's campaign in favor of a super-personalization of power and also his re-Islamization ambitions have sort of disturbed part of the nationalist electorate. Mm-hmm. But exactly as you said, I was also very much interested by the fact that the three main cities voted no, which means that the more educated part of Turkey, the parts of Turkey who have become more, I would say, familiar with the globalization, who really have entered into this sort of super interaction with the rest of the world that Erdogan
the more cosmopolitan centres.
Yes, and also the richest part of Turkey, to make it simple, have decided to oppose to this one-man rule system.
Now, he only won, there was only a very small margin, however, in the end. It was 51.41% to 48.59%. Now, they're not the official final figures, but they're the figures that we're getting today. Does he still feel that he has a strong mandate with that small margin?
I think he does. I don't think he really cares about that. I think what was important was to win at all costs. This is also why the campaign was so violent in some ways and why he crushed upon the opposition so much. He had no choice than to win this referendum. He would have preferred, of course, a landslide victory, which was not the case. But in order to get a larger vote, he should have organized the referendum earlier, probably not that late after the coup attempt last year.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the new system that has just been voted in is due to come into effect following elections in November of 2019. But between now and November, 2 years' time, what happens?
Maybe anticipated elections.
Will they be?
That's the solution. Yes, early elections, yes.
As early as this May?
No, probably not. But I mean, Erdogan is master at, manipulating the schedule. He knows very much how to get the best political calendar. He knows exactly when to organize elections in order to win them.
Gotcha. So he knows how to gerrymander the system. Is that it? Well, the electorate more than the system itself. But what about this 9-month-old state of emergency that has been in place since the coup attempt last July? Is this going to be extended? Will he look to enlarge it?
I suppose it's going to be extended as long as Erdogan considers that the terror threat is not over in Turkey. So any attack by the PKK that could happen any time would just be sort of encouraging, this this endless state of emergency in Turkey.
So it's indefinite, basically,
yes.
one could say. Now, both the main opposition Republican People's Party, that's the CHP, and the pro-Kurdish People's Democratic Party, the HDP, have said that they would challenge the results from most of the ballot boxes due to alleged violations and, of course, how the referendum was in fact run. Do these parties have any recourse with the judiciary in a post-attempted coup Turkey? Since July of last year, the judiciary has been hammering down on anybody.
I suppose they have no choice than to challenge the results anyway.
Yeah,
because,
but is it cosmetic or is it...
Especially the HDP, who's been actually really leading a very strong campaign in favor of the no, under constant pressure by the government, was arresting militants constantly. So I think it's they need to do it in order to be politically consistent.
Sure.
But I'm not sure this is going to lead anywhere for any of these parties.
So basically it is their obligation as opposition parties in Turkey to actually put this forward for their own electorate.
I think they have to do it also because they've been speaking a lot before the elections. They said that they suspected that maybe there would be some last-minute maneuvering by Erdogan in order to win the referendum. And of course, the technical aspects that's been contested, like some ballots not being stamped regularly, and which was validated just during the vote by the High Council of Elections. This is a sort of trick that's very obscure trick that deserves to be, enlightened a little bit, I think.
Okay. Now, also, let's just see from Turkey now to, well, especially recently, and that's when you were last joining us in the studio, throughout the campaign in the run-up to this referendum, Erdogan launched bitter attacks on the European Union, accusing member states of behaving like the Third Reich in failing to allow his ministers to campaign amongst expats. That was specifically in Germany and in Holland. But he has also, throughout that campaign, called on Turks in Europe to resist integration. Will we see an increasing pressure from Erdogan on the diaspora to come to heel, or does he already have their support?
That's a classic by Erdogan. Like, he's been campaigning for all elections in Turkey for the last 10 years, calling people to resist assimilation, comparing assimilation to a crime against humanity. I mean, going, very
the
far.
rhetoric is all the way up,
yes,
ratcheted up.
Always. So, but this time we've seen that the diaspora in Europe has voted massively in favor of Erdogan. I think the average is like 10 points above the results in Turkey, which has to be balanced against the fact that only about 50% of the people actually went to the polling stations and voted. So it means that the Erdogan's basis did vote more. There was a pro-Erdogan bias. What would maybe be a worry for me more in the future is the growing antagonism between the pro and the anti-Erdogan, of course, even among the diaspora.
Okay. Now, also, more with Turkey's relationship with Europe as well, is that Erdogan said that he would now hold talks on the reinstating of capital punishment. And that, of course, is a move that would automatically end Turkey's bid to join the EU. Like the French president's office today, Hollande's office, warned that such a referendum would constitute a break with European values. Well, is this going to be the final nail in the coffin for Turkey's, well, at least previous aspirations to join the EU bloc?
Well, first of all, we're very happy to have this very late and unexpected reaction by François Hollande.
Indeed, seeing that he was actually one of the people who allowed the ministers to come in.
He's been very indulgent to the Turkish government so far. You know that the Turks have been really playing in a very cunning way about the death penalty, like the possibility to reinstitute capital punishment actually appeared right after the coup attempt. Then they got some very strong reaction by the European institutions saying that this would definitely put an end to the accession process. So then Erdogan said, but if the people want it, I may have to do it. And then he just played it down. And then it comes again right immediately after this referendum. And he also warned that he might do another referendum to ask the Turkish people if they actually really want to join the EU. So we have a sort of series of referendum in preparation. But what's true is that the result is a complete divorce in terms of political values.
Gotcha. Now, Finally, yet again, I said there are a lot of things and a lot of cards that I think he has up his sleeve that are going to be played now that this referendum has gone through. But also looking to Europe, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, in a joint statement with her foreign minister, said that Berlin now expects Ankara will now seek respectful dialogue. They're being very, very diplomatic dialogue with all political and social forces in the country. But let's look into the region. What about Turkey's immediate Arab and Iranian neighbours? Are there any comments or reaction coming out from the immediate neighbours from Turkey?
The first reaction came from Azerbaijan. The first one to actually greet Erdogan was Ilham Aliyev,
which is, of course, a Turkish-speaking...
who is the closest ally that the Turks have in the region. Then there was a reaction from Qatar, there was one from Sudan. So it's not like we had major leaders in the region or worldwide who immediately rushed to congratulate Erdogan. And actually what is very unusual is that Erdogan himself said that he expected the EU leaders to respect, and he expects his Western allies to respect the result of the referendum, meaning that he doesn't expect them to be extremely happy at the result, probably.
Now, one final comment for our little look into Turkey today. Some French political commentators on the right wing, not the extreme right wing, but on the right wing, have said that we're seeing the rise of a new Ottoman caliphate. Do they have a point?
I don't really like this sort of historical comparisons, because I think what we're witnessing is more on a regional basis, and Europe should also show concern for that. The rise of new populist strong leaders who are acting in a very whimsical way, who are very unpredictable, and I think it's going to be very difficult to keep finding a consensus both within the states and between the EU and Turkey, for instance. I don't know how we're going to keep on that sort of transactional relationship that has been established for the last 2 years. I think it's going to be extremely difficult with Erdogan on one side and what's preparing here with the next elections.